Good afternoon. I am Ento Budiarjo. Welcome to Monday Live. This is something that we do every Monday here at 3 p.m. Eastern. So our mission is to discuss what's going on in smart buildings, smarter buildings, and the list of who we are is listed on mondaylive.org. Just would like to highlight the point that views expressed here on the show are personal, not of any company or organization. And please do post questions and comments on the chat, on the Zoom chat. That's really makes this show come alive if you get involved, with everybody gets involved. So it'll be great to hear from you. And this slide deck is on mondaylive.org in case you want any of the links that we provide on it. So our topic of this month of February is delivering smarter buildings. We've been talking a lot about smarter stack and specs and various other things. I think what we want to do this month is think about how we're actually going to make all of this work. How do we actually deliver all these wonderful things that we've been talking about? Because talking is cheap, as they say. So this is our agenda. We're going to talk about delivering smarter buildings, but this week specifically, we're going to talk about AHR. Last week, AHR and the ASHRAE winter meeting, and a recap of that, and get our thoughts and how we think that sort of changed the industry. So we'll do that. Before we get to that, I'm going to hand it over to Ken. What do you have for us this week, Ken?
Well, thank you very much, Anto. We've got still got our AHR Expo show issue online called Vegas Wins and Wins. Looks like it was a great show. I attended as an international COVID creeper, and I was remote. But as I watched the automated building show from as the audience rather than being deeply involved in it, it was a great show, and I think I should have stepped out of it a long time ago, because it definitely was much better. Strong speakers, great content. But what the revelation I had watching it remotely was that automatedbuildings.com has grown into something, I'm not sure what, but something bigger than me. And it kind of has become a flag for the industry to rally under, especially at AHR. And I think I'm in the throes of trying to figure out what to do with how automated buildings should evolve. And it dawns on me that the industry has to have some input into it, because really what it is it's a summation of the industry for the last 23, 24 years, actually. So this is actually my retirement project, and one of these days I'm going to have to retire. So we need to chat as an industry, because we need to see how, as an industry, we can best use automated buildings. What supported that thought was the great support of Cochrane Supply. They did an amazing job of running the sessions. Somebody complimented me on my people. I hadn't really thought of it, but again, in automated buildings terms, a lot of the industry has become my people. So thank you very much, industry, but for making me look great. But Cochrane really went out of their way to do a great job, and now they've captured every one of those sessions on YouTube's, which we have linked to the link below there. In addition, Nicholas was unable, he got tied up. It was kind of a tough year on international travel for AHR. He got tied up in Sweden with COVID and was unable to make it. But he has written us an article, and he provides a link to a video of his presentation, so you can catch up on that. So I think what you're starting to see here is, no matter how hard we try to do face-to-face, hybrid is always going to be a component of it. And no doubt the people want to do the face-to-face, but just from a convenience and for a whole bunch of other reasons, having having options is a good thing. Just to add fuel to that, we were requested or asked by AHR Expo. They took a look at what we were doing with our hybrid proposals or presentations, sessions, and they said, wow, that was good. The interaction of the people on site was good. We're looking forward to you doing that again in Atlanta in AHR 2023. So there we go. We're on our way again. So we definitely need to see how we're going to evolve all of this together. I think that's all I need. Back to you, Anto.
Thank you. Great. So just to be clear on that, on your slide, you actually put a link to the education sessions. So there's been a couple of questions on chat about the links, so that's where the links are. And as I said earlier, this deck is on mondaylive.org, so head over there and you'll see the links. And so moving on.
Ben Wallace is saying he's not seeing the link on the site.
It's on Automated Buildings, not on Monday Live.
It's also on the screen here. But
it's on the screen. So this deck is on mondaylive.org. It's right there.
Is it there now or not? Only after the show?
It's there in real time.
It's there in real time?
IRL, yes.
Okay.
But,
all right.
I think you should go to Automated Buildings. If you click on the logo of our opening session, it'll bring you to.
I'm going to paste it in the chat.
Yeah.
There you go. So, John.
I just wanted to point out some things related to potential evidence of corporate focus on energy and sustainability, right? Are we seeing a really new trend? Lots of us, and I think a lot of our listeners have been in this industry for a while and believing that various technologies can help make for a more sustainable world, more efficient buildings, lower total cost. And, I think those of us who've been down in the weeds doing it are often frustrated that, more people don't see it. But what I'm seeing now is it's getting attention, but from a different direction because of its part of sustainability and ESG. These are just a few things I picked up, Crestwood Partners, Burberry's, SAP, public corporations making significant public commitments to their plans. These all came from Smart Energy Decisions, so you can go over there and look at many more. There's dozens of them. Will this make it stick this time, right? Having been doing this since the 80s, I've seen, cycles of focus and activity, and then, it goes away. Maybe this time is different. So take a look over there. They get a lot of good stories over there that would apparently show evidence of corporate focus.
Great, thank you. Mark, I think you wanted to chime in.
I do. Yeah, unfortunately, time ran out for me to post this, but what's interesting, I found a new survey by the Conference Board that was just done released, I guess, February 3rd. And it's something we've been monitoring all along since we got together back in the day, obviously, when COVID first started. And so it's about employees' discomfort about returning to the office and their future plans. And what's interesting is that 9% of the surveyed of employees, and they surveyed 2,000 US workers, reported that they're back, 9% are back in the office full time, with 45% under some type of hybrid schedule. And again, some of this is not surprising, and I think is what we expected, but it's always good to continue to monitor this to see if progress is being made. Also, 71% of the companies changed their return to workplace due to the increase and rise of the latest COVID that we experienced and so forth, with 48% still not determining an actual return to date. And then I see Skip's on the phone. So Skip, this one is really for you, pal, is that also in this survey, 1 in 10 1 in 10 of the respondents said they intend to leave their current organizations and place of employment within the next 6 months, citing better pay, different careers, and ability to work from anywhere remain the top reasons. So how can we get those people interested in our industry? I'll leave that and turn it back over to you, Anto.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. That's interesting numbers. I had a couple of things. This article, which is not really about smarts, but it's about a different kind of smarts, the whitest of whitest paint that actually becomes an air conditioning without power. Really sort of interesting technology. And the other side of things is this paper that was shared with me last week about system of systems, and it was actually done by IBM. It was actually done a long time ago. It was done 12 years ago, but it actually puts a really sort of interesting perspective on what systems of systems is all about. In this particular case, at the global level, they actually took the global GDP basically and turned it into a system of systems argument about how things actually work between the different industries. Very interesting read, since there is a thread of system of systems in our industry in terms of how we can organize our future. So two sort of off the wall kind of perspectives. So before moving on, anybody else have any news or any things that they want to bring up before we get into the AHR? No. Okay. So AHR was last week. And really want to spend this hour talking about our sort of takeaway from it, our thoughts about it. And I kind of had these 3 questions. How was it for you individually? Obviously, this is kind of a new experience after two years of being locked in at home and doing work that way. And the second is, what is your biggest takeaway from the show, from the conference? And we talk a lot about change, and really the question is, what evidence did you see that things are actually changing? So those are kind of the 3 questions. I know that Bill, you wanted to go early because you may have to leave. So why don't I hand it over to you?
Yeah. By the way, that last article you mentioned, as a guy who doesn't, who's in your industry and doesn't know what a BBMD is or a VAV box, that white paint thing is something I can get behind. I can understand that, man. So thank you for that. Hey, so I'll start off by answering sort of what my overall impression was. And as you know, I like to be an interloper in your world. I've been to 4 or 5 of these shows, maybe 6 by now. And I came away with a real sense of something was a little bit different this time. I remember being in Orlando saying, same stuff, different day, same stuff, different day, like no innovation. And I came away from this show. I don't know if it was the number of software vendors that were there or the amount of money that's being poured into analytics companies, or I'm not sure, but it seemed like there was a tacit agreement that data was a thing. And that was on all areas of the floor, not just the little automation section. So that was to me, that was the first time, again, as somewhat of an interloper, that I went, like the same things you're hearing in this little automation section, the same things you're hearing over here where they're turning wrenches and they have big boxes and stuff. So I thought that was interesting for sure. And I guess my objective proof, all we know is a crap load of money being poured into analytics companies right now, from BrainBox to 75F, or I mean, just all these companies coming out. And I think that also just that sort of common language that's starting to arise there. So that's what I would say there. And then I had a couple takeaways. I'm still surprised that there's a question about who owns data. Now, there's nuance and all of that, but I'm still surprised. And I'm going to say to everybody on this meeting right here, if we don't get this answered right away, it's going to really inhibit our smarter building advancement. If we just can't say, it's your data, Mr. Customer, you own it, let us know what we can do with it, then I think it's going to limit us. That's my opinion. I also was quite surprised to be in one of the education centers. It was a room full of controls contractors. And someone posed the question, hey, raise your hand if you've ever installed an IP-based controller. I think like one guy's hand went up. And that blew me away. That blew me away. I was happy to hear that cybersecurity is really becoming a topic. Now, of course, there's still a lot of talk that no one's really paying for it yet and all of that. But I thought that that was neat to at least, it's getting a little lip service. I also found it interesting to consider the idea that the industry's basically at, what's the best way to put this? I don't want to say full employment, but maybe that is the way to put it. Like everybody who wants to work in the industry and has the skills is working. So there ain't much to pull from out there, meaning we've got to start drawing labor in from other areas. That could be women, that could be just other skill sets, whatever. But I thought that was interesting when you think about it. Like you just can't go, I mean, what you're doing now is you're cannibalizing from someone else. You're cannibalizing. You're calling a headhunter and he's pulling somebody from somebody else. So it's a big cannibalization. So I wouldn't mind being a headhunter right now in this industry. And we're basically at full employment. So Anto, those are sort of my takeaways.
Great comments. Mark, do you want to go next? Or I mean, do we want to react to what Bill said? Anybody?
I wanted to react to one of Bill's comments, right? That it should be simple to answer the question of whose data it is. It isn't, because it's up to the business models of the people who are offering those services. So it isn't something anyone can answer. You have to ask the vendor you're working with what are their policies around the data. And I get your point that that may scare people, it may put people off, may slow the industry down, but it isn't a universal answer. Different companies offer different business models and they charge differently because maybe they're going to monetize the data in multiple ways, so they can offer you a lower deal if you're willing to accept that, just like we all probably accept our data as being monetized. So it's just not a simple thing to answer, because different companies have different business models out there. So
I get that. That's why I said there's nuance in this. So for me, it's okay, Mr. Customer, here's our business model. Are you okay with that?
right.
And they go, yeah, fine. So I really get that. And there's nuance, and at least we should start with, all right, it's your data. Here's the 4 things we want to do with it. You mind? So anyway, that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, they need to be upfront, but that's different than, saying that it's a blanket statement. It's your data to all customers. It's dependent on their business model. So, okay.
I do want to respond to Bill's other point about the people and hiring and stuff, because we're facing that recently. It is now people we're looking for. It is impossible to ask for anybody to move to an office. They all start with, I'm only interested in remote. If you're not doing remote, I'm not interested in it at all. Software people are starting to talk about sign-on bonuses again and stuff to move, and knowing they can. So it's getting really tough out there to hire.
Yeah.
Okay. Mark, you want to give your thoughts on?
Sure. So first of all, I was pleasantly surprised at the outcome of the event. Again, you go into it with certain expectations, so forth and so on. And I must say, I was, as I said, pleasantly surprised, and the overall event itself exceeded my expectations. So first and foremost, I thought that was good. But a couple observations for me was, one, HVAC, traditional HVAC, is now beginning to play a much larger role in the smarter building initiatives than ever before. I think where that's coming from, it's from the manufacturers making their equipment, their solutions smarter through IoT enablement, IP, connectivity, and the whole increase in the connection of equipment now being connected and directly connected. So I think that was one for me. Number two is to echo a little bit about Bill's point. Data was the talk of the town. You could not go talk to anybody. You could not walk by a booth. You could not engage with anybody without bringing up the subject of data. Three is that integration is now back on the top of list of all these folks there. Is they want their systems, their equipment, their devices, whatever, to play an instrumental role in being part of the whole integration aspect of smarter buildings. Four is that when it comes to the supply chain, and again, we can't ignore it, most everybody I talk to, they're in panic mode now, is trying to figure out what's next and get product, get components and everything. But it's now panic time when it comes to the supply chain. And I don't know how to equate this, but I've noticed it over the last 5 or 6 years ago, is that murderous row, or what I refer to as the building automation software section, is getting smaller and smaller and smaller each year that we go to. And again, yeah, I will, equate some of it to people pulling out and so forth and so on because of COVID. But it will be interesting to see if there's no COVID issue in 2023, see if that row or that area starts to build back up. And then finally, that two things. So one is the convergence of the workplace with the traditional operational side. I begin to hear people talk about that. And in fact, we addressed that in one of my breakout panels. And then sustainability, of course. And then finally is that the beginning of different protocols other than the traditional stuff that we've been using all these years, whether it be LORON, MQTT. I did see that. So that's kind of my impressions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Steve, you want to, oh no, Steve, yeah, go ahead. Going in random order here.
Yeah. So two primary observations. One is from a business development perspective, I never appreciated as much the value of a trade show, particularly a large one such as this, to get to have a lot of activity in a short period of time, and the importance of the face-to-face contacts or presence that you have with people. The fact that you can walk the show, introduce yourself, find out what a particular company is doing, share what you're doing, and through that interchange, create opportunity or further existing opportunities. That was very much the case because I spent time helping a partner in a booth and just facilitating their sales process. But as an independent consultant, I was also found it very useful for me to be able to go to booths, many of whom I had never had any prior engagement with, and see the opportunity that way. So I think just the whole concept of a trade show got reinforced to me from a business expenditure and time perspective. Okay. So the other, that was my other point that I wanted to raise. The show, to Mark's point about what do you call it? The murderer's row? But basically the BAS section of the show, the dedicated area, the majors aren't in that section anymore. Number one. So Siemens, Honeywell, Johnson, they're somewhere else in the show. But more significantly, as I walked to their booths, their product offering in building automation was almost non-existent. So you didn't really see them dedicating any floor space appreciably that I saw to their technology relative to what they've done in the past. So that, I'm not sure what that says, but perhaps they're putting emphasis, like in the case of Johnson, on all their equipment sales. But I didn't see a Metasys panel to be found as an example. So it's interesting how that has evolved over the years. So they're no longer present in our space, if you will, or in the dedicated BAS space, and they're combining everything and then de-emphasizing in essence the technology side of things, except through maybe large displays or things of that sort. I don't know what the rest of you saw in that regard. But that was
hey, Steve, on that one, and I've got to leave after this to go to another call, but my question might be to everyone, is the automation space shrinking, or is it spreading all the way throughout? So that's a different way to look at it, where before maybe you were in a box and maybe now it's transcended that box and it's pervasive. Just another possible way to look at it.
Yeah, I was actually going to comment on the fact that there was a lot more digital technology across the broader space. Maybe not as prominent as something like Metasys in the JCI booth would have been in past years, but it was there in pretty much all of the booth. They had some kind of controller, some kind of internet, something or other in many, many booths. So that was, I think.
I'll echo that, Anto, as visiting with different folks. That's one thing I did notice, that there seemed to be more controllers as part of the booth. Steve, they may not be showing a particular brand or whatever, respected to that, but controls and controllers were there for sure, no question.
Right.
To your point.
John?
Back to the definition, I always find, sorry, I just wanted to blurt in here. The definition is, I always found it interesting when I talked to control vendors and stuff. They all controlled the industry. Their perception was they totally had the market under control, and they were the leader. And when I listened to them define the market, they truly were. But when I went to the next person, they defined a completely different market. And they all work in their own. It's such a big industry, and there's room for all of us. We don't even run into each other, and we can all be as successful as we think we can be.
Yeah, so 2 comments. First of all, it was a very good event, good to be there. And, I think a lot of people focus on, it wasn't as big as 2019, but it was good. It was big. Unless you're trying to count people, you say this is a busy show. And as I saw someone mention on the chat, you could actually walk down the aisle. So in some ways that may have made for a better show, that you could actually stop and have a conversation without being basically run over. Orlando was a madhouse in 2019. I mean, I found it just difficult to even be in there. So from that point of view, it was good. As I would agree that, well, first of all, I would disagree that controls are getting smaller in the industry and the use of them, but I absolutely saw that fewer of the majors were there in any way showing their automation and controls technology, right? Wasn't in the JCI booth, as we mentioned, even if you go to the ones where it was there a little bit, it wasn't, like that used to be a big focus and everybody wanted to demonstrate and show off their I don't understand that. I think kind of perplexed by it. you saw the newer the newer upstart startups, whatever, they were there showing off their hardware and software and seemed to be quite busy doing demos and, explaining what they were doing there. I think it's just something about the majors and how they view that show or shows in general, that they're just not using them in the same way we might have experienced 10 years ago. It just doesn't seem to be that way. I don't think it was just 2022 that was so different. I think we've been seeing this trend go along for the past 4 or 5 shows, is they're just not there as much. Something else that I'm putting in context since I've been back, actually, I had some people, I was there, were you there? I talked to people who work for major corporations. They still are not allowed to travel until, I talked to one major corporation today, until the end of Q1. They can't get on an airplane, right? And having, been a number of different places in the country here in the last 2 weeks, it's some places it's a very stark change of what the cultural expectations are, right, of things. Like, I thought Las Vegas, it was actually kind of odd, right? The level of enforcement of masks in casinos, won't talk about the show, everybody obeyed the rules and had their masks on and stuff. But, and then I go someplace else in the country and it's like, what pandemic, right? I think this is, I don't know how to describe what this is doing to our business in the country. I mean, you got to kind of show up and, okay, what mode am I supposed to be under here, right? Because, you wear a mask where no one else is and people look at you and then you walk in the other and, oh my God, I'm sorry, I forgot my mask, for 2 seconds, right? This is still having a big effect. And I think it would go back to Steve's point. The final thing I'll say is, human beings have to get together to have information exchange and to drive business forward. And, I've felt all along the last 2 years, collectively, we've been burning the capital we all built up over years and years of meeting and conferences, et cetera. So finally, on the changes, and Bill kind of mentioned, I know he had to leave. The main things I would say is we saw different messaging around some of these things, right? It's the same control hardware, but we're going to say it's there to achieve air quality or safe spaces or whatever. But when you look on the bench, it's the same control hardware, right? So I don't know whether there was that much truly new when it comes down to doing control automation in a building, or just a new way to try to position it.
So John, to your last comment there, so would you say that it's the same controls, but it's different outcomes that we're looking at now?
I don't even know. I don't know if I want to say, different outcomes being used as a headline in the booth, right? To get somebody to pay attention. But what have we been doing, for many years, is applying microprocessor computers to read sensor values and make decisions. And maybe the algorithms are better. Maybe they employ more advanced math techniques. But in the end, it's all about, what are you trying to do? I want more fresh air, right? So I'm going to change the set points on how much fresh air or how many air exchanges I want, right? The hardware seems, it comes and goes. There's a new hardware, it's fancier, it's nicer, maybe it's lower cost, maybe it has more efficient connectors. We've all been trying to reduce install costs for, every year, forever, right? But, I think when it comes down to it, you got microprocessor boxes with IO that are connected on some type of network, maybe faster, maybe better, maybe IP, maybe not. I think that was a really telling comment Bill Bain made, that when that question was asked, not every hand in the room went up that they're installing IP-based controllers, right? Which points to the reality of putting stuff in buildings, right? RS-45, that'll go 4,000 feet, it's pretty low cost compared to having to put in an IT infrastructure, right? And then coming under the IT group and with your switches and routers. So it still happens because owners want lowest first cost.
Okay, moving on. Jim, do you want to jump in and your thoughts?
Sure. I think I'd concur with Mark and John. I was really almost taken aback by how many people were there. I expected it to be much worse. it was pretty good. I think people were interested in cybersecurity. I had a number of serious conversations with real people at mostly higher complexity organizations, so that was interesting. If we hearken back to Orlando, some of you might have heard of my comments before describing it as a Walker convention. I saw a sea change in the age of people. So as the industry has aged out, we've hit that inflection point where a lot of the seniors are disappearing from the scene. And the question is are they being replaced, or what are they being replaced with? And at the larger companies, I'd make the observation that, a large consulting company came by and told them that, they're sticks in the mud and that they would be a lot more innovative if they just brought in people from IT. So that's exactly what they did. They brought in a bunch of 40-year-old people from IT who know nothing about the industry. And talking to a friend of mine at one of the big companies, he said, we're not even sure we're going to train this new person because they're not staying long enough. So those IT executives are being brought in. They have a latency of 18 months before they're on to the next thing. And to me, that's really interesting, because you're seeing, the diagnosis by the big consulting company is that these companies are not innovative. What I'm seeing is that Wall Street sucked the soul out of these companies over the last 20 years, and that's why they were not being innovative. It had nothing to do with the decision makers or the people they had in product marketing, but rather financial returns and decimation of these great institutions over that period of time. So I think that's a really interesting trend, and I'm going to be very curious to see how that turns out. The final thing is I was taken aback by some of the startup controls and analytics companies and how outlandish their claims were. And in terms of hitting the substance of where the industry is, as Bill said, no one's hand goes up when IT is mentioned. Data standardization is in a much worse place than IT. And I was taken aback at claims that were being made.
When you were talking about the younger people taking on these roles, are you talking about sort of at the executive level or at the field level or full up and down?
These are at the executive level.
Any other comments on Jim? So
yeah, one quick on Jim. When I ran into you, you had your sunglasses on. Boy, did you look marvelous! You look like you were out of Hollywood. Sorry, I had to throw that one in.
I forgot my light glasses that day, Mark. Sorry.
Okay, Gina, you were in Vegas. So how was it for you? What is your big takeaway, and what evidence did you see of change?
Okay, well, I'm going to try to get this done before my headset dies here, because you guys know how bad my audio is. Sea of change. I can't disagree with anything that Jim said or John said. I do think that the messaging was different a little bit, but then again, I thought it missed a lot. I thought lack of talking about security, lack of talking about data and the utilization of data. I also thought on Jim's comment about the claims of some of the companies, it almost seems like it's one size fits all on some of the newer companies, and I don't think that's exactly accurate. So I think more companies out there that are getting amazed by the new toy should do the appropriate due diligence. That's what I would say with that. I was actually a little bit surprised about the amount of software that was out there. I thought that was a couple of companies were, hey, here's our new software. I also thought, but I was a little disappointed because I think as we become more software enabled, I think that also leads to a little bit more customization, and nobody talks about that. So it's still, let me give you this canned, and I'm speaking very broadly. So let me give and software, and hopefully it works for you. That's the same kind of stuff we've seen for years with the big guys in this industry. So I don't want companies that are coming up with innovative software to follow in that path. I was actually a little bit shocked at some of the big guys and how full their booths were, because I was thinking, please, come on, go elsewhere, look at some more innovative companies. So I don't know, maybe they had a lot of things in there. And let's see, I was also a little bit shocked at the lack of attention on ESG and how our industry contributes to ESG efforts and initiatives. So I wish I could be a little bit more positive. Overall, I saw incremental change, but not much to write home about. But I will put a caveat in that scene. I didn't walk the entire show. I stuck mostly where the control show was. And that's about it. So I can't speak to, so that's my summation.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Anno, do you want to chime in from a remote? I mean, you weren't there obviously, but.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting listening to everybody's perspective of the thing. I decided not to go for several reasons. One was business related, which turned out to made sense, and therefore was kind of a good choice for me personally. But at the same time, listening to the people, I think it would have been useful to have been there. And I guess the question I have for the group is, did anyone there generate anything new and interesting? Did you meet new people? I guess that was really the question that I was looking for. Was there anyone new that you met that you probably hadn't seen before or hadn't discussed before in some context? What was new, I guess?
I certainly met a few new people, but also I think I would say that I met people that whose views have changed since the last time. So it's new, not in a individual, but perspective. I saw quite a lot of that.
Okay.
And I'll echo on the new side, there's new needs, new requirements that may not existed 2, 3, 4 years ago that people are beginning to talk about, ask for, how we're going to do this. So, and also there were some new people, to your point, as far as new faces and things like that. So I would say those two areas would fall in for the new category for me.
Okay, Ken, did you want to add any more? I know that you said quite a bit at the beginning. Do you want to add any more following this dialogue?
I don't think I have too much. I was only able to look at it through our education sessions. I was greatly impressed by the crowds as well, given the handicap of it being a COVID event and seeing everybody in the audience with masks on. But the questions were good. The interaction was great. I was extremely pleased. The quality and quantity of speakers we had and even the topics and stuff. What it indicated to me is that I think automated buildings needs to grow to be more of a syndicated type of identity that shares the power of the industry. When we see the power that Cochrane and his team of folks brought to it, if we in fact had everyone, providing bits and pieces of that to the automated building effort, or I'm happy with, we come up with something new that if you think automated building, this isn't the thing, but we need to band together as a common voice industry. Kind of kicking around the idea of, like, can we open source automated buildings? Can we share? Can the industry run? Can the industry run a magazine? Can everybody fall underneath this or another umbrella? And can we grow, and can we innovate better under that? It's interesting that in the AHR environment, it's difficult to go as who you are, because you have a vested interest. You have a company that you're trying to, and as soon as you appear as your company, then it's like, well, go out and buy some space on the trades floor. But the free education is an area that we can kind of float through, and we can have a chance to change opinions and to educate, which is a big piece of what we all have to do. So anyway, I'm looking for the guidance from the industry as to how we should do that. This all kind of comes at a time when I'm starting to wind down a bit, and it becomes obvious that there's just so many directions going here that it's difficult for a one-man show to kind of keep pulling this stuff together.
Great, thank you. So my thoughts, I was very pleased that I went. I thought it exceeded my expectations in terms of number of people, just the conversations. I was really glad. I agree the sort of the comments made, I think initially by Bill, about data being much more prevalent as something that companies and people were talking about. I was watching data versus information. You know, I think the move to data is a really, really great positive move. It's going in the right direction. But I'm sort of watching how it gets to information, which is contextualized data that can actually be used. And obviously, analytics is one of the ways of actually linking data and information. I didn't think there was as much talk about information and information systems as there was on data, and I think that's okay. It's a progression. But I was watching that, so I thought that was very interesting. The thing that I was quite blown away with actually has nothing to do with AHR. I was really amazed at looking at the gambling technology that is now in the casinos. It's like the one-arm bandits don't really exist anymore. They're sort of multiple button bandits all over the casinos, which I thought was interesting. But anyway, that's unrelated to this.
So you can't get your right arm workout because you don't do this anymore. You push the button. Like
Yes.
that's all we do for a living is push buttons.
Did you see the automated roulette wheels?
No, I did not. That would have blown me
Automatically
away.
spins the ball, no person needed, and yeah.
Yeah, I saw the automated blackjack table.
Yeah.
And the other thing is money is no longer welcome there. Cash.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's all to do with.
Isn't that one of the Simpsons predictions, Steve? Like they've predicted everything else, that casinos will be run by robots in the future. There will be no people.
Right. We're there.
They're already there.
David Katz has asked how the consortium went, and I thought I would comment on that. I think we had a strong presentation. Anto did a very strong presentation of the Smarter Stack. I think it was very well received. There was a lot of conversation around it. John made a number of good points. I got to hold forth a bit. I felt, and Melissa, the labor-based component that Melissa Boutwell was working on was, I think, very well received as well. Anto?
Yeah, I would like to echo in on that. Watching that remotely, I had the exact same experience. As you know, I've been here in my window during all of this, and I learned a lot. And I loved the interaction between you guys. It was great. Just well done.
Good.
Yeah, I was going to bring up that interaction. I think that came across almost much more than the content, the specific content, right? And I mean, we started off doing something, and John jumped in and said, "Well, maybe we should do it this way," and we did. So it was very sort of dynamic and sort of moving, not moving in a tearful way, but sort of dynamically sort of getting to the substance. And I thought that was really good, and it really sort of communicated that there are a number of people that are actually thinking about this.
I think there's another thing that's happening in our world here, and I'm calling it COVID casual. And somehow seeing somebody with no pants on is becoming normal. So we're getting to know people, from where they live, and we kind of expect that. And the whole formality, if you can remember the old days where we all used to wear shirts and ties and stuff, and then eventually we kind of drifted away from that. So I kind of describe this as COVID casual. It's and people are more comfortable with that. So if you try and ram a cram presentation down their throats, they're not so excited. But if you chat it up and somebody jumps on somebody, great, good stuff. Well done.
Another variation of that, Ken, that actually occurred to me is that, I mean, in normal years before COVID, I would have met you guys, people on the screen here, and many of the people on the attendees sort of once or twice a year, right? And we'd spend time, how are your kids and all that kind of stuff. And it's almost like we don't need to do that anymore because we're connecting so much more frequently using virtual tools like this and many other meetings that it almost sort of creates the community in a virtual world that can then benefit when we actually meet in person. So there's something going on there, which I thought was really noticeable.
Yeah, that's what I kind of noticed in the power. What I saw is this drifting away of automated buildings to something that was different than me. Like when I was sitting there watching it, it was like, hey, this is a good program. It's like, oh, this is my program. So it was kind of an interesting separation. But I think that's exactly it, is this whole, we need more experience in how to use these virtual tools. And I think what we need to do is we need to involve in our industry and in our growth groups. Oh, by the way, another kudos was the Haystack. The new edition is amazing. Great document, well presented, well timed. And I think that's a great example for us to follow too, is just first the model of an open source group. And then secondly, the way you guys have showed automated buildings, what a good publication should look like. So I think that's an interesting area too that we need to follow.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Ken. I mean, it's interesting being involved with Haystack so long. I mean, that magazine, I think I wrote 1 page out of 73, right? The community's driving it because it's a necessity, right? A standard way to mark up data so that it can be used between all these great software applications, right? And in talking to some of the people there, they're using it, but they don't talk about it, right? They use it out of necessity, but they're not really talking about it, in an odd way. And we certainly haven't reached there that, nobody asks if your web page was done with HTML. Of course it was. How else would it work, right? Now, we haven't had that level of unification of a data modeling standard in our industry, but I would say that the need for data modeling, which was borderline unheard of concept, even 5 years ago, is just an accepted thing, even if people are using some different approaches to it other than Haystack. So
I think we're starting to react and interact as like IT people, and it's interesting. And the whole open source thing is changing how we do it. And I think we're just discovering the power of why we want to go that direction and how communities can drive stuff. When some of these younger people called me the OG of collaboration, and I Googled that, and it's the original gangster. And I think that's probably, I took that as a compliment. So
it's a compliment.
So back to this.
That wasn't my understanding of OG.
No, me neither. So back to the whole idea about using electronic means and all the new way that we just talked about. I think it's returned us to years long ago, the whole art of a conversation. Oh my gosh, to have a conversation or conversations with people versus just quote unquote texting, emailing, whatever the case is. So I think that this whole idea of real conversations for a change is really having a major impact on what we're doing, where we're going, and how we're going to get there. So
in the last few minutes that we have, we've set up this month to be talking about delivering smarter buildings. So how has the AHR experience and the conversation today, how has that helped that process?
I wouldn't say it did help. And I would go back to one of the things Jim said, you know, it would be nice if all of the work and complexity involved in integrating these systems didn't exist, but it does. And buzzwords and promises and claims only serve to confuse potential owners, operators, and buyers. And I would say that situation is being made worse. Literally had a call along those lines with a major real estate player today. It's not helping because it isn't a matter that all the complexity went away with these new things. It's just these new things are being thrown out there. All this other stuff you got to do, you still got to do it, right? So I don't think it did help address anything other than the interest is there, the desire is there, right? More companies talking about it, more focus on data, but nobody dares go near the reality of what it takes to do it. Can you imagine presenting that in a trade show booth? You'd be talking to yourself.
Do we have the better tools, a better understanding to get there?
I think the Smarter Stack is going to help us with that. I think that, you know, that one of the things we can do with the Smarter Stack is present the truth. And if people come in with oversimplification of pieces that are necessary, now we've got a metric to point that out with, right? Instead of just saying, well, you know, you've got the newest, latest, greatest thing, we can basically ask them to prove how that solves a problem on the Smarter Stack, in the Smarter Stack framework.
There's always better tools, right? I mean, but they're better tools that incrementally streamline, incrementally improve, incrementally lower the cost. Nobody's got the tool that just wiped out all of the steps you need to do to make buildings perform well, right? So better tools, but no, not that now you don't need tools. So.
And I thought that, just to clarify my point before, I thought that the lack of understanding of what it takes to do an existing building and how difficult it is to collect metadata and models from existing buildings, I thought that was vastly unknown or understated by some of the new entrants into the market.
Well, oversimplified. I think, but I think, Anto, that's kind of what should be our focus for this year. I think we did a good start with the stack, and to John's point, tools are going to make the difference. I think the stack's a good start, but I think we need to, as this team, we need to kind of focus on how do we improve those tools and how do we get that information out into the wider world. You know, I'm starting to see some legs, but I think that's a good focus for 2022.
To that point, you know, the next thing we've been talking about doing here is building out the specifications for the interoperability, and we know, well, I think that's a non-trivial task to define each of the layers in a way that identifies what needs to be done, truly needs to be done to overcome the things that aren't working well, and also becomes the yardstick by which other products can be measured. So, because that's part of the, to Jim, to your point, you look at a new entrant and you say, this guy's missing this, this, and this, because you know better, right? But to the degree that we can capture that in words and then share that across the industry and get some attention drawn to it, because that's ultimately the degree to which, I believe, the degree to which we can specify this stuff successfully is the degree by which the buildings start to become smarter. Because these are the table stakes.
Okay, if I can take the whole thing another direction and answer your question, Anto, is some of the opportunities there. Bill started out, and what I took from what he said is we got to stop stealing people from each other, and we got to get some new people into our industry. And I think AHR is an extreme opportunity for us to do that. And I was extremely proud of our education sessions, especially Smart Women and Smarter Buildings was a great one. And also Welcome to the Jungle, which was aimed at bringing in new people. I don't know if you think about it, but AHR, you got all these people who almost talk as funny as we do. And they have, they have a lot of this stuff. They know what a VAV box is. And they know what a system is. And they've probably been in the business as many years as we have, but they've got some young folks coming up that have learned from them. That's our potential. I think if you think about the 40, 50,000 folks that are at AHR, if you're going to hire somebody, probably if you could just go out on the floor there, and it would be better than hiring them off the street or hiring IT folks. I think this is a great opportunity for us to lasso a whole bunch of new people and bring them into our industry.
So with that, we need to bring this to a close. It's been a great conversation. I think it was a great week last week, those that were in Vegas. And so a video of this week's show will be up tomorrow morning sometime. So we'll see you on YouTube channel, and then we'll see you live again next Monday for Monday Live. So with that, have a great week, everybody, and see you around. Bye-bye.
See you guys.
Bye.